You've reached the Union of Metro Street podcast, where we discuss the San Diego music scene of the late 80s and all of the 90s, from the shows we worked to the shows we played. Here we go.
Yeah, that was Soma upstairs 30 years ago.
Yeah. Trevor, how you been?
I've been good.
Yeah.
It's funny now that I listen to this because, I did choose a career in music. So, here we are, and it's okay. I'm still alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of, we're gonna go through the roots, but what are you doing now? Like,
I work up at UCSD. I work in the music department.
oh, okay.
So it's mostly tech stuff, but I'm around music, 50, 80 hours a week or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's, San Diego has changed so much in the last 30 years. I mean, we got this trolley thing now and a new outdoor amphitheater just opened up upstairs, up north there. And, yeah, it's cool. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. And weren't you doing, or do you do Adams Street Fair or?
Oh, producing?
Yeah.
No. I did the Sweat Engine was my first sort of, touring underground electronic, band. And I got hooked into the Tijuana scene for a while.
Okay.
Did this Below San Onofre compilation. Started playing Tijuana quite a bit. Hooked into samba. So I'm originally a trumpet player, but got into electronics and percussion, and then naturally, percussion samba.
Yeah.
And got into taiko for a while, and Sweat Engine faded out with our lyricists, two of them, Timo and Mark, going on their own way. But, I've been doing electronic stuff, solo stuff. And then I've got a partner I play with in Berlin. We've got this ongoing group that's Luis's called Aesthetic Meat Front. And that's just
nice,
piercing and blood and horrific things.
Yeah.
Sort of the extension of what industrial could be if you could, if you could do everything that you wanted to do.
Right.
San Diego, you can't do, fire, nudity, blood, all that stuff. So this is, that. Yeah.
I tried back in the day with Crash Worship, but
oh man, love those guys. I mean, I love anything that's like lots of drums and lots of people to watch.
Right.
We tried fire a few times and had some accidents and, but, we did breaking stuff, which was always lots of fun. I'd go to Goodwill and pick up, a bunch of plates and, whatever.
Yeah.
It was fun.
It's dramatic. And we're going to get into that too, but let's go back to what got you in music to begin with? Like at what age? And because I know we talked about this before, skateboarding was part of it was just our lifestyle.
Yeah.
But then at what point did you start getting into music? And then let's start with that.
It's a good lesson because, I'm in fifth grade or going into fifth grade and, my mom worked in the school and she's like, she played guitar and she's like, you want to do music? And I'm like, yeah, sure. And I didn't really know much about what that meant, doing music.
Right.
We had a music teacher that came to our elementary school and she said, well, I can borrow a trumpet from a friend because, we weren't, we had skateboard money, but we didn't have, instrument money.
Right. Yeah,
I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. It totally does.
So I didn't even really give it any thought. I'm like, sure, I do that. And, the music teacher would come by and, the trumpets would meet on one day and the flutes would meet on another day. And, we did this for a year. And at the end of the year, there was a concert, and it just, that was my life. Okay, you practice every day. Then it became, I'm in band class through high school, band, Renaissance fairs. So I got involved in a Renaissance fair, and they said, "Oh, are there any trumpet players in the house?" Or whatever they say in their Elizabethan accent. And I'm like, "Yeah, I can do this." And they're like, "Okay, we're going to pay you this much." And I'm like, "Wait, I'm getting paid?"
Wow.
Oh yeah. And here's your costume. Here's your trumpet. Just show up and do this thing. And I'm like, I'm finally a professional working musician. So I played Renaissance fairs, herald trumpet for the horse tournaments for a long time. And then that's what got me into drumming. Because trumpets play this thing and then wait for an hour. And my good friend Steve says, he played drums, and he's like, "Oh, why don't you just, bring a drum, and when you're not playing trumpet, you can play drums." So I did side drum for a long time, marching drum. And, coming into moving to San Diego to go to college and then getting involved in the radio station here, I really got interested in electronic music and then also the drumming thing. So, the rig that I set up was electronic percussion. Mm-hmm. I actually brought one of the pads. Maybe I'll pull it out later.
Yeah.
It's one of the pads that was at every Soma show, and it still works. I'm blown away. It's caught on fire a few times. It's covered in paint. But that's, that's sort of the history. It starts with, mom saying, here's this thing. Okay. 20 years of practicing, getting involved in performing live, and also, costuming and theatrics. That was such a big part of what became Sweat Engine, which was, we're putting on a show, circus, costuming, lots of percussion, electronics, and Mark and eventually Timo's contribution, which is, I'm pissed off at everything, the world, the system. You look at all of our lyrics from those days, songs like, Shit for Brains and, the police brutality that was going on in LA, pissed off at the system because of that. Eventually, every once in a while I'd come up with ideas like, hey, Mark, can you write a song called Waiting to Die? Because that's how I'm feeling right now. And he was really good at, he'd just sit down and he'd write the song, and my whole contribution was the music and, the chorus. That's what I did. And, Timo and Mark brought the real anger and frustration at the universe. So,
So when did you guys come up with the name and actually form as a band? Because I didn't get into about you guys until later, 89.
Yeah. So I came to San Diego in 85 and immediately started working at KSDT. That's UCSD's radio station. Yeah. And Mark was a year younger than me. He came in 86. And we hooked up pretty quickly. We both skated. He did freestyle biking. I did unicycling. Eventually, we started doing the mobile DJ thing. Right. The two of us, through the radio station. Eventually we formed our own business and started making decent money DJing primarily frat parties.
Oh, wow.
And, so we were buying, that was back when you go to Warehouse and you'd buy your vinyl. Mm-hmm. So every Friday we're at the Warehouse buying vinyl. Maybe we'd head down to Soma, we'd be at Soma, Friday or Saturday. But we were DJing a lot of parties, and like everything Mark does, he started getting pissed off at that scene. When we played as a band, we're treated like royalty. Right. And I still remember, this one week we played 5 shows in a week 3 over a weekend. We played Soma, we did this music technology festival, and we played with 9 Inch Nails down in Tijuana. And the next week we had a frat party, and these guys were treating us like garbage.
Yeah.
And Mark put on Ministry or something like that, and some frat guy came up and was giving him all sorts of attitude. And Mark's over 6 feet tall, and he doesn't put up with anyone's nonsense. And it was just, he took the needle on the record and just scratched it off and went onto the microphone, and he goes, well, I guess there's no musical taste here, so we're going to go back to playing your frat crap. And I was like, okay, we're not going to be doing this for much longer. But it was a real evolution of trying to be DJs and be a service environment, and then different day of the week where we've got all access passes, and we're up on stage in front of downstairs. Soma was 100 or 150 people, something like that, max.
Like that, yeah.
And Iguanas was 2,200, I think.
Yeah.
And you go back and forth, and we shut down our DJ business, but it was nice having all that gear. We having a lot of percussion on stage, we needed a loud monitoring system. And Soma, I guess you guys had monitors, I don't know, but we brought our own PA.
Kinda.
The PA was good. I liked it. So we'd bring our DJ PA to put on stage so that we could hear what was going on, because we're trying to play with sequences. And man, try to play acoustic drums downstairs in Soma with, trying to sync up with the sequence.
It was a giant echo chamber, and plus the stage. Remember, you were basically in that meat locker.
Yeah.
Stage is,
it was awesome.
10 inches tall or something, with a low ceiling.
Yeah.
Did you even need a PA system in the dungeon? I mean,
well, for electronic music, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'd go down and get there as early as Len would let me in, because I needed to go through and EQ my stuff, because, we're doing, low subs and these kinds of things that normally you wouldn't have on a traditional band reinforcement system. And I have no formal training in all this. I mean, I took electronics classes and I can play trumpet, but it wasn't like you go to school to learn live sound. I mean, you just do it, and when it breaks, you fix it. And I remember I was so proud, because I'm like, we really need someone to mix. And we had a guy that just funded our album, and I'm like, how about you mix our show? And I'm like, I invented this thing. It's a long cable so that we can put the mixer out front, and we send all the channels to the mixer out front, and you can mix from where the audience is. I'm like, I thought I invented this, right? And I don't know if it was you or someone else that said, well, that's what we've got here, because, we had so much, we ran a lot of our stuff through, this just massive, very expensive sampler. And I ran, 2 or 3 line level things, and then we put effects on all the vocals. So we had guitar effects processors that somehow needed to get into the house system. So, we were one of the few bands, if that's what you call it, that's, we tried to mix everything ourselves, because the traditional environment didn't really support that idea of, you got a bunch of drum machines and pedals and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I didn't know what a DI box is, and nobody had them anyway. So
right.
That's what I was going to bring that up. I'm pretty sure, because I think Sammy was probably doing the sound back then, right?
Yeah, Sam would have been doing it upstairs, but in the downstairs stuff, we had a booth that was kind of, it was against the wall, so Mike would be there, but it was so dark anyways.
Was Mike doing the stuff downstairs? Or?
Yeah, every now and again he would be, but it wasn't really doing sound.
You're talking Nevison, right?
Yeah, Mike Nevison. But when they would come in, there was just so much extra stuff. It wasn't as easy to where, I mean, like your traditional punk band was easy, because you just plug and play.
Yeah, you didn't need to mic the drums.
They had so much stuff going on.
And,
and I do remember that before, because I was learning, and I was so intrigued by how they were getting so much sound and so much chaos, and it was just, the energy was so much greater, but to be able to get it mixed right, and then you got Nevison that's just kind of standing there going, because back then he was doing Dance Macabre. So again, really straightforward. You remember Mike with the really long blonde hair and our security guy. So it was a bit of it was a learning experience. And
you guys did a lot of industrial back then too, right?
Yeah. When they would come in, when the main floor, like Meat Beat Manifesto and those shows, they would have their own people. But as far as like where these guys came from, and doing it downstairs was a difficult room. It was good and moody.
I loved it. I absolutely
seems
loved
like
it.
Most people that played it did love it. So
well, it was a very special space in that there was a downstairs and an upstairs, and I'm not aware of, at the time, any other club that did something like this. And what it allowed for was, I used to go a lot because I could go down, check out the band. If I didn't like it, I'd go upstairs and dance, traditional, electronic dance music of that generation. You dance for 2 or 3 songs, go back downstairs, see if the band has done something more interesting, or maybe it's a different band. They used to book several different genres. It would be like, an industrial band and a, Red Hot Chili Peppers style. I think we called it San Diego funk or something like that. There were a lot of those in the early 90s. And, maybe a punk band. That's, before the hardcore scene really took off, it was just traditional punk for the most part. And I really like that environment, that ability to go to a club and not go, oh, this band sucks, I guess we got to leave, right? Right. Or you go to a club like the LA clubs and it's like, oh, we got a goth room and we got an industrial room and we got a punk room, and you go, all right, so it's 3 DJs, and what happens when the band plays? Oh, we shut off the goth room and force all the goths to listen to, industrial. And it's like, none of this makes sense. And I loved, as a patron, Mark and I would go and we'd hang out at Soma because it was, if we got bored with both the band and the DJ, we'd stand outside and talk to Len, and he'd give us, words of wisdom on how to be a better band, or how to, keep the audience. And as a band, I didn't want people hanging out at our show if they didn't want to see it. And I was used to playing, we got hooked into clubs like Sub Nation and some of the others that are primarily goth. And the goths didn't like us. I mean, we were angry men, playing aggressive music. And we'd have, primarily male audience or the military. So we get a lot of the Marines would come and
get a little carried away.
No, it was fine. That was the audience.
They didn't get violent.
No, they didn't. And
of course, there was no alcohol served there.
Yeah,
right.
But what was nice about downstairs at Soma is we knew everyone that was in that room was there to see us, because if they didn't want to see us, they could go upstairs and dance to, Gruesome Twosome. I mean, that was the song that was like, I characterizes Soma for me. They'd play that 2 or 3 times a night. And so both as a patron and as a band, I loved the downstairs, and there's a stereo PA, big, nice subs. And as far as other percussion went, I mean, the one thing I brought was this is a cymbal. It doesn't look like it, but
that looks like a tradition.
This is definitely a Sweat Engine thing. Yeah. So I didn't have, drums. I got, this is a trash can lid, and I painted it. Okay. And this was at every Soma show that we played. And so in the beginning, I didn't have any cymbals. I had trash can lids. I eventually found a snare at the Goodwill that I, sort of reconditioned. But most of our sound was generated by the sampler. It was electronic and electronic percussion. But downstairs, we're like, okay, you can hit anything and it sounds awesome in this room.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't like you needed expensive drums to make an interesting sound in downstairs in Soma. The intro that I played, we eventually had a kit drummer. It was just amazing kit drummer. He ran the what they called party sounds at 91X.
Oh, okay.
And we met him through our relationship with 91X, and I'm just an amazing drummer. And I'm like, can you just stand up and, I'll just give you a couple pads. He's like, no, I play kit. And I'm like, that's a real problem because, we're trying to keep this electronic thing going. So I gave him an electronic pedal. I'm like, just don't, use your acoustic kick, use the electronic pedal. And I eventually gave him electronic hi-hats and stuff like that. And, it was pretty good. But man, when he brought his full kit down, and he could play every genre. He was a gigging drummer. It was an awesome just wall of
the
sound
visual
there.
itself was intense to see him playing. We were actually just watching another video earlier, and just the visual of when you guys were on stage, because of how non-conventional it was, is what I always thought made it brilliant. Yeah. It was just like this wall of sound. And, for the most part, for the layman person, they think industrial, they think of something like Nine Inch Nails, or I'm not really versed into all the genre. And then when I was trying to book you guys and figure out who to book you with, there was bands like Babyland, like we were talking about. I still have a 7-inch from them. And now, here's the one thing. Were you ever in Crash Worship, or did you? Okay.
I went and saw a bunch of their shows, and sometime later, I had set up my business in what was the Wiki Up Cafe out on Park, and they still put on events there. That was such an awesome space. Yeah. So we had, I had my business up in the upstairs, and we set up an internet cafe kind of thing there. That was in, the late 90s by this time. But yeah, I loved Crash Worship and some of the other kind of, they just come in, with a bunch of drums, do this like chaos, no fire. I never saw them with fire, and then leave. But we, I had a few drummers that played with us, and they eventually, we all got involved in the Burning Man thing for a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, great bands that came through there. I mean, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I remember all the bands. A lot of them I met because, Mark and I worked at the radio station.
Right.
So we'd either bring them in to do, interviews or shows or whatever. A lot of the people at the radio station, Inch and Grinch, I forget which one came first.
Inch with Stymie.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
And, those guys I met first through the radio station, and then they're like, oh yeah, we're playing Soma, come down. And I'm like, oh yeah, come down. Cause I know if I don't like their music, I can sort of sneak upstairs and like listen to some Meat Feed or Consolidated or Gruesome Twosome or whatever. And, in Ministry, of course. I think between the radio station and Soma, that was our life back in, starting in 1990, really.
Okay.
Was our first shows around Soma, and then it just kind of ramped up with, okay, can you guys play once a month? Yeah, sure. And, we do a flyer design, or someone there would do a flyer design. We go down, pick up a bunch of flyers, and, we'd drop them off at, off the record to lose or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'd make the rounds. That was my thing. I was still in school, but we were doing pretty good sales of like cassettes and stuff. T-shirts too sold really well at Off the Record. They'd sell anything on consignment. Yeah. So I drop off 5 or 10 every week and go pick up the money, drop off flyers, hit all the cafes.
Yeah.
There weren't that many. This is before Starbucks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
but Gamma was still around.
Oh yeah, Gamma.
Because that's how I initially got in. But yeah, Off the Record was the big one, and then up north, up at Lou's Records. But the thing that, we talked about this before with other guests is when we first started booking shows downstairs, the thing was the club upstairs, Mania was the one. But there would be a dance club, and it would depend on who was kind of doing it at that time. John was doing one.
Yeah.
Whoever would be doing it, so that's why there would be the dance club upstairs, and then I would book downstairs. And then eventually, a lot of people don't realize that we even did that at all, because the main stage was perfect for a dance club. I mean, it was just space all over the place, and it would be packed, but it wouldn't really be packed. So you still had breathing room, and you could kind of stare at someone across the room. It was a different time, and then eventually we ended up just doing more and more of the stuff downstairs. And then eventually we would do something upstairs, and then we started doing more upstairs as we started to get credibility. But we're talking the early days. And so what was the first time you guys ended up playing on the main stage? Because those were few and far between, remember?
Yeah, that was either Frontline Assembly or the Meat Beat show, one of the two. The Frontline Assembly show was the one, that was the first show that Timo played with us, and that would have been 91, like late 91.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And that was interesting. The challenge for me is I played larger rooms before, but when you are in this big rectangle and you're up on stage and you're so trying to hear the sequence. So we're trying to stay in time with, it's before computers, of course.
Yeah.
So, either I've got a sample or, the Roland D50 is running or whatever. We're trying to play to that. And you've got this slapback echo against the west wall that's like, 200, 250 milliseconds. John, our drummer, he's like, oh my God, this is driving me insane. Every time I hit my snare drum, I hear an echo, and, I'm like, yeah, I prefer the downstairs playing. But yeah, it was a cool show. That was fun because, we went on first. I think Biohazard went on after us. And Frontline Assembly they had these lifeguard towers with all their gear on it. And I'm sort of bitter about it because they're like, well, there's not enough room on the stage for your drummer. I'm like, what do you mean? I mean, you want us to play the show without a drummer?
Right.
And there's not enough room on stage for your guitar player. And I'm like, what? This is like, well, this was going back and forth between us and the stage manager and those guys. And it was, I have such fond memories of Len stepping in because we had pushed this show so hard on 91X on loudspeaker. Yeah. And we had some proof, I don't know if they're the check marks or whatever, that said that, the people were there, not necessarily to see us, but because of
your promotion.
Because of our promotion and whatever. Mm-hmm. And Len just said, he said this, and then he said, so you guys will make room for their drummer. You'll make room for the guitar player. And poor Ray. Ray was Pain Emission from Pain Emission.
Yeah.
He started playing guitar with us around that time. And Ray's like, oh, it's not a big deal. I don't need to play. I'm like, dude, we're going to play one of your songs.
Yeah.
He had Bimbo was like one of my favorite Pain Emission songs. And we did a Sweat Engine rendition of it with, lots of live drums and stuff. And it was like one of the best songs. And, but yeah, good memories and, for me anyway, good memories of Len looking out for us,
right.
As a local band that was truly there to support and bring audience to the touring band.
Yeah.
And, I think we only played, it was just that. And then the Meat Beat and Consolidated, which was so awesome. Those guys are so cool. And
yeah,
they had their, sort of circus style stage antics that Meat Beat had at the time, and Consolidated had their, gruesome video of, you got to become vegetarian, watch this video, it'll do it for you.
Yeah.
And it did. I was like, yeah, it did it for me. But I loved, playing with those guys. And the upstairs with the second floor balcony was just so cool, because people don't really talk about this a lot. I'm kind of short. I'm 5'6". Mark is like 6 foot something. And we go to shows and I'm like, I can't see anything.
Yeah.
And, there's always some guy with a big hat or a girl with a big hat or, fuzzy hair, whatever it is. It's like standing in front of me and I can't see shows. So I really like Soma. I could hang out upstairs. I could see the band. Some of the best photos we have from that Meat Beat show are, people that managed to take photos from behind us.
Yeah.
Like you could stand behind the band on stage. And, really, really good experience. The other bands I saw there, we saw Nights Are Ebb there.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't play with them, but they were upstairs. And they were also I really liked their music. Their stage show was just super clean. One drum pad, 2 drummers, each has a drum pad and like a cymbal, and then they each had their sampler. I mean, it was like so clean and and I'm like, this is exactly what I don't want to be. I want a bunch of crap on stage. I want, it's got to be dirty and smoky, and you have smoke machines and
some chaos.
But it's a good example of an act that I really like. And the inspiration I got from it was, okay, I like them, but I don't want to be them.
Right.
And, we also saw there was Tit Wrench played upstairs too, and they were an inspiration for Mark. I don't think I'll try to quote what he said, but it was another one of those, Mark, he's like, I like their music, but I don't want to be them. I want to do something different than what they're doing, type of thing.
Yeah.
But it was cool. It was a good time.
Well, that's good. You should always try to do something different.
Yeah. And it's, it goes back to that. You're putting on a show,
right?
There's history. There's, okay, people want to see guitar, bass, drums, and they want to listen to songs that they know.
Yeah.
And as a band that's starting up, well, if someone doesn't want to listen to you because they don't know your songs, how do you get your songs listened? And this is before the internet. So you go, okay, well, you got college radio, which was huge for us, and we had our claws into every college radio station. In preparation for this, I went through my box of memorabilia, and I found a fax that I had sent out to college radio. We also sent letters, which was weird. I would send cassettes, or usually we wouldn't send vinyl out to radio because Mark's like, yeah, they won't listen to it. They'll just throw it in the dumpster.
Yeah.
And he knew that because he did that.
Yeah.
And so, getting people to listen to your music, it had to be on vinyl at that time in 1990. And so I think it was the first copy of our record that I got that wasn't the test pressing. We had a test pressing, but the first, stamped copy of our 4-song EP, I took down to Soma and I gave it to Dax. That's Todd.
Mm-hmm.
He's still around here in San Diego playing. And he played, I think he just listened to the 4 tracks and he picked the one that sounded most Soma-like. And it was this song, Until Dawn. That's, dun, 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 dun. And so with a repetitive until dawn, and it was like people danced to it.
I think they were just listening to that earlier.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's cool. I gave records to the other people in town. I'd go up to them while they're DJing. Hey, here's our album. We're already friends, because we've been hanging out at their club for a while. And they're like, okay, which song should I play? Okay, play this one. And then eventually, we played Piranha Room, which was a big deal for us because they didn't really have a lot of live bands there. It was primarily just dance club.
Yeah.
And so we played there once, and they had been spinning that song. And so, of course, we book that as the second song in the set. So the first song is like noise and chaos and whatever. And then the second song is this one. And everyone's like, they get up and dance and, maybe the song after, you lose a few people and you lose a few people because they don't know it. But it was a different time in learning about, how do people watch live bands?
I can actually play that song if you want me to put it on there.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Take a listen to it. Some Sweat Engine Until Dawn. Here we go.
Greatest health threat facing our nation. Until dawn, you are surveying the ship. 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 Until dawn, after such blows coming in and going out. Until dawn, the homeless fill the streets, they know what life's about. Until dawn, thieves go to work to pay for crack they think keeps them alive. Until dawn, ruthless little vandals deface walls with adolescent jive. Until dawn, a single mother prays for help from welfare, united way. Until dawn, we sleep like stones with the promise of a peaceful day. You are surveying the ship. Can't you hear that? You are surveying the ship. Can't you hear that? Until dawn. Ready? Stay down. State-of-the-art destructive capabilities, commanded by a unique combination of software and organics. Until dawn. Until dawn. This is a must. I don't believe this. This is a must. I don't believe this. Until dawn. Until dawn. You are surveying the ship. Oh no! Get the hell out of here! You are surveying the ship. Until dawn. After such blows coming in and going out. Until dawn. The homeless fill the streets, they know what life's about. Until dawn, thieves go to work
That is so classic. I can remember the pit and in the basement, in the dungeon. And I remember now just hearing that, just seeing, because once people get moving, and then you get that pit, and then in that room you had to stand between the pillars. But Jerry, people would go absolutely ape shit. I mean, just freaking ape shit, like a hardcore show, like, New York hardcore, just swinging arms and, oh my God, that's so crazy.
Yeah, it was nice.
Were the shows you guys did at Iguanas, were they pretty crazy?
Iguanas, that was the goth industrial thing. And there wasn't really the dance floor was pretty small. So it wasn't like...
Nobody jumping off the third floor?
Oh, at Iguanas? No. And, and there was alcohol, so it's a different vibe. But yeah, that song was one of the earliest ones. And it was also a good example of, okay, there's literally nothing that isn't electronic in that song.
Right.
I mean, I did it. I recorded it all on our sampler, including the vocals. I had enough memory in there, which was hard back then.
Oh, yeah.
To get all the vocals in there. And, when it came to playing live, we're like, okay, how are we going to play this live? How can we make it more interesting? And I found that one of the things I started doing in these songs is there's sort of this middle section that's a little more housey, techno-y, dancey. And, I would have that in almost every song because it gave us an opportunity to do something crazy. So like there's no vocals in the middle part. And that was the time when, at one point I brought it. I'm going to open this up right now.
Yeah. So he's opening up. This would have been used at Soma back in the day. And
so this is my skid lid. And we use this during Until Dawn, and I have a drum trigger in it.
Yeah.
And so I'd hook it up into the first the octopad and then later the drum cat, and you hit it and it triggers a sample, right?
Right.
Like a whatever. But, so I jumped down into the audience with a long cable. It's not wireless.
Right.
And like I'd hit my head and it would make a sound, and then you sort of go, okay, yeah, you can hit me too.
Yeah.
And it became this, audience participation thing where the middle of almost every song had an opportunity for us to go, okay, it's not just about dancing. It's not just about going around clockwise or counterclockwise in a circle,
Right.
We're going to destroy this thing, or you're going to beat me on the head, or orange spray paint became our thing, fluorescent orange. And it sort of came out of like, well, what color can you get flyers made? You had orange and yellow and whatever. So yeah. Orange became our color, and I'd go to Home Depot and buy as much fluorescent orange spray paint as they had, and we let people spray paint us and stuff like this. But it was really, there's that center section of the song where, okay, you don't have to listen to the lyrics anymore. Okay, it's, the song is like, okay, the system screwed up. We sleep like stones with the promise of a perfect day. It's like sort of vague, but it's, these are Mark's words, like we're sort of helpless, or we're ambivalent, or we're jaded, or whatever. All the songs were this sort of thing. But then there's this center section, which is either, techno or samples that, these are all RoboCop samples. I'm simply a machine. I'm simply a machine. I'm simply a machine, and get people to, just become, part of the music.
Right.
Don't just passively listen to the lyrics, because a lot of them are pretty vague, especially with industrial songs. But, those downstairs Soma shows, especially with that intentional thought that, okay, we're not just going to recreate a bunch of songs that I did on my sampler.
Right.
We somehow need to give it a live experience and take into account specifically downstairs at Soma. I mean, a lot of our shows began there and then went other places.
Right.
And, either upstairs or to Iguanas, we played a few times or something like that. And you go, okay, well, when you're on stage and you can't light things on fire and you can't interact with the audience, it's a very different experience.
Right.
And you fast forward 30 years and you go, well, this is exactly like why all these bands have video now. It's no longer just watching guitar, bass, drums on stage. People need something to entertain them.
Right.
And a tiny little person on stage isn't good enough anymore. And so you go back to, wow, 100, 200 people in a tiny basement. That's the ideal place. And that all takes me back to Soma.
That's you're striking the memories of how it was. It was, you were part of the show. I mean, there's no way to not be. I mean, the band's not put up on that pedestal to where you're looking at jumbotrons to see what the guy's doing on the guitar riff. You were part of the show, especially with you guys, because you would come off of the stage.
Yeah.
I probably actually inadvertently stole some ideas from you guys for my performances.
Yeah, the whole audience interaction thing was big when I finally got my wireless headset. People don't remember this. Back in the late 80s, I had the same headset that Madonna was using, the Shure one. It was wired.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, okay, well, that means a lot of things. I'm constrained to this area.
Right.
And, our drummer didn't want to wear headphones. So, he was pretty free. But, that ability to like either unplug and jump down into the audience and do something, anything. And it was just, one time I needed to shave and I shaved my, like half my head, with on a razor, but, wet shave with like shaving cream. And it was just, I don't know what it symbolized, but people really liked it. Another thing I did with this helmet was, this is back when you still had film cameras, but the disposable kind. And so I glued cameras to my helmet and I ran around the audience, and somewhere in storage, I still have that film. And I had it developed. I just ran around. Wow. I took pictures of people with, this camera that was, duct taped to my helmet. That was pretty cool. But yeah, interacting with the group, meeting the group, and then also making that connection with, okay, you want to get our music, what do you do? Because people didn't buy merch at a dance club.
Right.
At least not back then. We would do a show, but then all the consignment cassettes and t-shirts at Off the Record to Lose or Gamma Gamma or whatever would then sell out the next week. So we knew it wasn't that we were selling like traditionally a band on tour would sell, but we knew that doing shows resulted in selling merch.
Right.
And making that connection with people to say, well, after the show, hey, yeah, you can, they're like, oh, I didn't bring any money today,
Yeah.
Well, yeah, go to Off the Record and, you can pick up stuff. And, some of the people would, they'd have friends and they would buy stuff and, mail it to their friends. That was kind of the thing.
Yeah.
At the beginning.
Making mixtapes and then sending them.
And of course, that was a time before websites, so you didn't have your own band website. So people, just go to the records. That's cool that the local record stores did that. Where they could,
that was very cool. And they had a Off the Record, the one up in Hillcrest. They were nice because you walked in. The first thing you saw when you walked in the front door was the local music consignment area. And, that was cool, not only with, selling your own stuff, but I'd go in and I'd be like, oh, yeah, I recognize this name from Soma or whatever.
Because their flyers were plastered all over the window.
Right. I mean, there were the bands that the 91X guys would promote. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't my thing. I wasn't, whatever. Rocket from Crypt was, amazing and whatever, but the music never really spoke to me.
Right.
And the shows were pretty, traditional. So it just wasn't for me.
Right.
So I wasn't getting good advice from the media, but being able to go in Off the Record and just go, okay, what other bands are here?
Yeah.
That was very cool. And, you know, what I would start to do with the bands that were out of town, like Biohazard, Contagion, Babyland, these guys, is I'd send them something, send them a cassette or whatever, and say, hey, send me something back.
Yeah.
And they would. And it was, you know, it was a sort of a cool vibe of you're a community of bands because, you know, maybe you played together once and you want to do a show. Okay. You know, I pick up the phone and I would call Dan, you know, at Babyland or whatever and say, hey, you want to come down and play Soma? Oh yeah, sure. So that was, you know, that was pretty cool.
And the scene back then was different than all the other ones that were kind of going around because of the camaraderie of the bands. And because, you know, San Diego being so diverse, and back then too, remembering there wasn't as many bands. By the time it got to 95, well, I'd say the heyday was probably around 94, 95, when there was so many bands that by that point I had a bunch of them. But the scene had grown so much. So we're talking the early days. It's like Jerry was saying, there's no internet. You have to put out flyers. You have to hustle. You have to make the connections with other bands, and that's how you can grow the scene. And the industrial scene was still...
Well, it was us.
It was, yeah.
As far as San Diego went, and it was cool for us to be in there because there was Sweat Engine, and then there were the LA bands, right?
Yeah.
Pain Emission, you know, they were trying to go off to the goth thing, and so it sort of started this. Well, are you more like Ministry, or are you more like Skinny Puppy?
Right.
And I'm like, no, we're more like Ministry, but no guitars.
Yeah.
You know, I was not into the guitar thing. And what was great for us was people like Harlan, you know, Fine Line, and some of the other ones. You have a big band coming to town. They're like, okay, you know, you're the only band in San Diego. So either we bring someone from LA or it's you guys.
Yeah.
And it was a very cool position to be in because we got to play with all of our heroes.
Yeah.
You know, so it was, you know, KMFDM and Meatbeat and Consolidated, 9 Inch Nails, of course.
My Thrill Kill Cult. Did you guys?
No, we didn't play with them.
That was later anyways. That would be later 90s.
You know, for a while there was this Club 860 in PB that Tim Hall was booking, I guess, for a while. And, you know, he'd call us and he'd say, so-and-so's playing. And it was great because it was, you know, San Diego, it was always on a Friday or Saturday. It wasn't like they'd even try to book a band in any other day of the week because people wouldn't show up.
Right.
So for us, you know, either being in school or having day jobs or whatever, it was easy for us to say, oh, yeah. And so, you know, initially when Mark was doing all the programming, you know, he'd be like, okay, we're playing, you know, Soma this week. Okay, great. Oh, we're playing this time this week. Okay, that's great. And then he's like, so I got some good news, but you better sit down. And I'm like, why, what's that? He knew, you know, we're DJs, so we know each other's musical taste.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of Tackhead and the early, you know, Mark Stewart, sort of the dub electronic scene from the 80s. And, you know, Mark gives me, he plays this record. He's like, okay, you need to guess who this is. And he plays Down in It. And I'm like, oh, it's Tackhead. No. It's this new guy, you know,
yeah,
9 Inch Nails. And I'm like, no way. So I, you know, look at the back and sure enough, all the people on there are, you know, Tackhead producer types.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, you know, it clued me in on the kind of music that I like, and the music I like to play is, you know, based off of these guys. Keith LeBlanc was a drummer for them. And so when Mark got the call for, you know, oh, Harlan wants us to play, you know, Iguanas, I'm like, oh, I'm totally there. That's great. But we'd be opening up for 9 Inch Nails. So, you know, that's the downside. I'm glad. I mean, I was so inspired by this because by this time, I'm a huge 9 Inch Nails fan. And it was, you know, for us, it was an okay show. It was awkward being on such a large stage without the ability to do any of our fun stuff that we usually do.
Yeah.
But the show was fantastic, and you know, good experience all around.
Yeah, that sounds.
Did you see them when they played the Bacchanal?
No, this was the first time I've only seen him once since, because they kind of went in a direction that I wasn't so into. But that was like just an amazing show. And, being able to hang out with Mike, who is their drummer, who has since passed, unfortunately. He was doing all the sound check, and I got to hang out with him, and this is, 92 or something. No, it must have been 91. So
same time they did Lollapalooza.
Yeah. So this was sort of the beginning of the move into the sort of goth fetish aesthetic. It was still, the first tour, and it was such a cool show because, we're saying, how do you perform this kind of music?
Right.
Where either you have a sequence or you have samplers, or you have, some bands had backing tracks, certainly like Frontline Assembly was 99.9% backing tracks, which is fine. I mean, if you got lots of blinking lights on stage, that's what you go to see. And so there was this community, especially when you got to hang out with these people. Well, how are you doing what you do?
Right.
And I'm like, well, I put all of my money literally across 6 different credit cards into this sampler, and it can do everything. All of our sounds are coming from the sample. I don't have any mixers. I don't have anything. All the MIDI goes into this sampler, and the sound, except for the vocals, all the music is generated from this. And, he was explaining to me how they did it, and how they did, how do you get those lush vocals like Until Dawn? Mm-hmm. And Until Dawn, that's all me, Until Dawn, but it sounds like me 4 times, right? So, the way I do it is I've got an Until Dawn sample in the sampler. I hit the drum pad and it plays Until Dawn. So, but I also say it, right? So I'm layering my voice on top of a sample, and that's how we did it. You go and see bands like D. Warsaw, who I also loved. Yeah. And I got to talk, we didn't play with them, but I got to talk with their drummer, and he had a similar setup to mine. And I'm like, how are you doing it? He's like, oh, I'm triggering 4-bar loops. This pad does this pad does this. So it was a really great time to be communicating with these other artists in how do you do this live? Because now you go, oh, I throw it all in Ableton and hit play, right? Yeah. Or, half the songs are just a backing track in Ableton, and then Ableton's generating all the other songs when I hit a drum pad. Okay, well, there's no individuality in the performance. But being able to talk with these other guys, especially the tech guys, we played with one band at Club 860 that they were triggering, or they were syncing everything off of SMPTE. This was just crazy. It was a bunch of guys that worked at Guitar Center. They were complete tech heads. Yeah. And it was just, they were explaining to me what they were doing. Oh yeah, we got our backing tracks on video, and we sync via SMPTE, and we have 3 different decks, and we're running SMPTE between. And I'm like, you guys are crazy. Yeah. I mean, no video, just, well, how are you syncing your MIDI? And they're like, well, that's the problem. We never played live before, and we need a 100-foot MIDI cable, and we don't know what to do because we can't do our show without it. I said, I got a 100-foot MIDI cable in my van. And it's like, where did you get it? I said, I made it. I said, well, you can make MIDI cables? I'm like, well, yeah, you soldered 2 MIDI plugs on the end of a 100-foot cable. It works. And, but those were really fun experiences. And being at Soma specifically, I come back to that, which is being booked with bands that aren't tech bands, I think was so key for us learning. I learned so much about microphones and guitars and amps and things like that by, being around these bands that are using different kinds of instruments. And, we're all samplers and, oil drums and things like that. So real traditional industrial, electro-industrial. But then you hook up with a band like Tit Wrench that's really a punk band. Yeah. I mean, they're a punk band with samplers, not a sampler band with punks. Right. And, they always had a weird way of, doing their electronics. Hate Department was always interesting. In the early days, they're like, yeah, I just don't let my drummer have a kick drum. I mean, what do you mean? You don't let your drummer?
Yeah.
We never had that band dynamic where I was like, I'm not going to let you have, whatever. I'm going to suggest you have this.
Right.
But I didn't like that idea of a band leader dictating how someone performs their instrument.
Especially when you're doing something so experimental as it is, you kind of have to let people do what they're going to do and find out what works.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, there's resentment. I mean, I got lucky with all my bands because I'm freaking nut on stage. Absolute, especially when I drink a lot. But I was allowed to do it. I mean, Cockroach. That was just, Iggy Pop on Iggy Pop, but with me instead. So in the early days, even to this day, Neubotten's hugely, a lot of punks really like it. So with you guys doing what you were doing, and again, because you were experimenting, you were growing, and you were figuring out how to do it, that was about as punk rock as you can get. So you bring in people like me because you're just doing something different. And the fact that you have other musicians that are also creating that whole sound and the way to do it, trying to keep up with the limited. Would you say limited is a nice way of with the things that you can do? Because now everything you just plug it into it. You can plug it into an iPhone and you can write a whole album. Yeah. And you could just stand there and push your iPhone and shake your butt or whatever.
And it's not, I don't like to go down that road of things are so easy now. They're just, you don't have to make choices because there are companies that have made choices for you.
Okay.
And I like to think of it that way because this goes back to, me and Mark, and then eventually me and Timo, the anti-corporate, anti-system. The system is not necessarily leading you in the correct direction. And so, my more recent artistic stuff has been, okay, maybe I can do it with a computer, I can do it with a phone or whatever. But sometimes, let's go get some hardware and, see what happens, see if there's a happy accident. So composing music might be, leveraging those things that we know. You go back to people want to hear a couple verses in a chorus or whatever quite often, or else, maybe they'll lose interest.
Yeah.
But
the hook.
Yeah. See if there's something that we can get beyond what some corporation has told us to do.
Right.
And then there's the flip of this. And I love doing this because I think it's hilarious. I have friends that will bash on companies like Behringer or Roland or whatever. And so I become fascinated with, okay, I'm just going to use all Roland equipment just to spite them and see what the corporation is telling me to do, because you can't deny that so much of the big electronic scene, people want to hear that kick drum.
Right.
And how can you say that, I'm going to do something different and yet attract the same audience? You simply can't. So
you have to lure them in and then
and that's
lead them.
That's why in Until Dawn, I love this, the center section that I wrote, all those, I'm not using any, traditional drum machines or things like that. They're all samples that came with my Roland sampler, but they're samples of Roland equipment. So that's why you have that center section that's kind of techno-y, acid techno that came out of, that hardware. Mm-hmm. And, people recognize the sound. So it's not just about recognizing the composition with, experimental or electronic music. It's like you play something and people go, okay, I accept that that's that kind of electronic sound. It's a TB303 or it's a TR, 9 or whatever it is. But the same goes for the industrial sound. And this is like with the Neubauten stuff, I love you've probably seen the films, the playing the shopping cart and things like this. And I love that when you can recognize what that sound is, oh, that sounds like someone, using an angle grinder on an air conditioning duct.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know that sound because, this is what Babyland was doing with their oil drums and their angle grinder. And I'm like, oh, I know that sound. Okay. Yeah. And that's such a big part of industrial music that is not the electronic dance music. We go back to, Residents and Neubauten and these guys, and even back to Music Concrete and stuff like that, where you go, okay, we're going to use found sounds. Right. And, we'd get into the routine that before our show, I'd drive around and I'd always return it, stuff from construction sites, air conditioning ducts and things like that. And we'd use it at the show, and I'd take it back when we were done. My drum rack that I used for years and years was just a piece of metal I found in a construction site that Mark welded a cross beam on so I could put my drum pads on there. And, but you'd hit it and it would be like, okay, that's the sound of a wooden drumstick on a piece of steel or a piece of aluminum, whatever the case is. And then you go, oh, I'm going to put a microphone on that.
Yeah.
And that's where we get that sound.
And for a live show, you can do that, which adds to aesthetics, but you can also record it and then you have it in a loop so you can use it for recording purposes so you don't have to bust out. But for me, what I always preferred was just the live aesthetics. Look at that. And so this drum it's a Roland. When did you get that? So
this is a Roland PD-20. I bought this used at the Guitar Center. It used to be out on El Cajon Boulevard. Okay. So I bought it used back then. And it's basically, these are the most awesome drum pads because it's basically a piece of fiber wood with some almost like a mouse pad type material and then a piece of plastic on the top. I take the plastic off because it eventually split, but you can hit this so hard because it's a 1.5 inch thick piece of fiberboard. And so I got a bunch of these. I eventually bought more of them, ran them into the Octopad or later the Drumcat. Mm-hmm. And then I put these brackets on that, Mark could make these kind of pipe for me. And these brackets would go into a piece of aluminum crossbeam. And we used stuff like this for all the shows.
Yeah. So and the aesthetic of that.
Basically, you guys made up your own rigs and stuff.
Yeah, for me, I never liked the idea of a sit-down drum kit. So, and this is before Roland and the other companies, Alesis were selling their kits. So the Octopad was the thing of the time, 8 pads, but you could plug in external pads. So I'd seen Book of Love. Remember those guys from the 80s? So this is new wave techno, girly techno pop. I really like Book of Love. I saw them out at the Metro. And, there's a girl playing drums and I'm like, this is in the 80s, probably 86, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. So I'd seen Art of Noise live and they were using Fairlight, all Fairlights keyboards, and their show was a bunch of people playing keyboards. And I'm like, okay, I like their music, but I don't like what I'm seeing on stage.
Right.
This is not interesting to me.
Right.
I want to see, people hitting stuff. And so I really was inspired by Book of Love, and I managed to find where I could buy an Octopad. I remember I bought it online. Mail order was a thing. I got some catalog from some company and ordered that, and we put together, my first rig was the Octopad just by itself. The first show we played up at UCSD at the pub up there.
The Triton Pub?
Triton. It was called the Triton Pub back then, and we got that space as part of being associated with the radio station. Matt Schnur, who was the program manager up there, he booked that space for us, and then as we started,
a great space.
Yeah, as we started doing shows at Soma, we got more and more industrial, old school industrial. So it was, there's a picture of me and Mark down there on probably our second show down in the basement, and it's just, combat boots, black shorts, white shirts, very industrial.
Yeah.
And I had samplers back then, and, we'd trigger the samplers with the keyboard, but it was all about this, the boom,
live
boom,
performance.
boom.
And
there's always something to watch. And Mark was great to watch on stage. I mean, he's this big, tall guy, and he, you can feel the anger and resentment coming out of him when he's doing his live thing. And, it evolved from there. When we heard about the 9 Inch Nails show, I bought the drum cat. That was like the new thing. And I was like so inspired.
Yeah.
And the drum cat allowed us to do some things like trigger sequences and then also layering sounds. So it was like our kick drums weren't just one kick drum. It was like an 808 and two things you never heard before. And the harder I hit it, the more of something that would happen. So it was an intelligent drum pad system. And so we'd put the drum cat up with a bunch of pads on the outside. I got some other people to play with us. The 9 Inch Nails show, I had a bass player that I got, was a grad student from UCSD, really good percussionist from UCSD. I gave him my Octopad, and we ran all the MIDI into the sampler. So, we're doing our thing. Sometime later, Mark, ran his course. We did the show at Soma, and he because we're carrying the big speakers, and he just racked his knuckles on the going back up the stairs after the show.
Oh yeah.
Really badly. He's like, yeah, I'm done. He's like, I played with everyone I want to play with.
Yeah.
And, I'm not interested in doing this for free. It's not,
right.
It's not. And I'm like, okay. And Timo was a big fan. He was hanging out outside, and he overheard Mark say what he said. And Timo's like, I'll do it. I know all the lyrics. And I'm like, and Mark goes, okay, you're hired. And I'm like, wait, what? And, so we just went into this new phase with, Timo being this amazing character on stage.
Yeah.
I mean, just, not just against the system, but not acknowledging that a system exists. I mean, every show we played, the promoter would come up to me and say, next time you can't do this or that. I'm like, what do you mean me? This was all Timo. He was always misbehaving and climbing on, priceless artwork or whatever happened to be the case. And his buddy CJ was a traditional rude boy. So he was deep in that scene and percussionist. And we got him. We're like, yeah, you come in and play. He's like, well, what are you going to play? Oh, I'm going to play oil drums. I'm like, how? He's like, I don't know. I got axe handles. And I'm like, this sounds super industrial. So the first show he played with us was downstairs at Soma. And I said, okay, I'm just going to give you some advice, play 2s and 4s, boom, stop every once in a while. That way people recognize when you come back in. And then during the middle section, go wild. Yeah. Like jump down into the pit with me, and we're going to do some wild stuff. And after the show, I mean, I was just amazing show, amazing sound. I mean, you're hitting a oil drum with axe handles downstairs at Soma, even without a PA, is like,
yeah, the reverberation
amazing.
down
and
there
just
would have been.
Looking at him, doing his thing was so amazing. And after the show, both of his hands were just completely bloodied, and one of his fingers looked off. He's like, yeah, I broke my finger. I'm like, what did you do? He hit his finger on the, so we left, and it was like, he was, he got it fixed and it was all fine later. But I'm like, this is what a show should be, just crazy people banging on stuff, sounds they'd never heard before, bodily damage that isn't necessarily permanent. One of the best shows ever until we played Play School at the Sports Arena a little while later.
Yeah.
And they just let us do whatever we wanted. And so we stacked a bunch of stages on top of each other. So you could be up 3 stories high. And CJ was there. And it was just, that was the evolution beyond downstairs at Soma, where we were like, we want to recreate all the good stuff from Soma, but now we're in this big space.
Yeah.
How do we do this? Oh, okay, we're gonna set up stages and we're gonna create this little performance area just like at Soma.
Nice.
And it was like there was so much inspiration taken from downstairs at Soma, going, okay, we're gonna create a space the same size. We got other people to perform with us. Somehow these two girls hooked up with us and they wanted to dance, and that was both good and bad, but it gave us that whole, you've got people on stage that are eye candy, and that's their job.
Yeah.
And this is something that maybe a couple of years before, I'm like, no, I don't want any faking of anything on stage. I don't want any dancers or things like that. But it was that was
really kind of a
experience.
progressive thing, wasn't it? Because at that point, that started to become more
rave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, how long would that set be at Play School? How long would you guys play?
That was an interesting thing, because there was the main floor with the DJ and then all these side areas in the sports arena. And they set up a side area that was for the Goth industrial area. And they basically said, okay, we got you guys, we got Ray from Pain Emission formerly formed this band called Penis, which was basically him, his DJ friend, and a bunch of dancers. And they did this sort of really cool, not on stage show. They used 16 millimeter projectors as like spotlights. Like they didn't put film in it. They just used the bulb. And so these people would walk around with, and girls would dance, and it was like this more techno type of thing.
Yeah.
And they left it up to us. They're like, okay, we got this going on, you guys work it out amongst yourselves, which is sort of what Soma downstairs was. You got three bands, you guys work out. Usually the second band was the headliner, because people wouldn't hang out late enough or often enough for the last band. But we'd work it out amongst ourselves. Nobody told us, okay, you're going on at this time.
Yeah, it wasn't nearly as...
But we'd play like 40 to 45 minute sets traditionally. And then, we'd go an hour if we had the opportunity. There was a club, and I'm forgetting who ran this one. It was down in PB up on the hill by the Mossy Nissan. There was a club there for a while. And we played a New Year's Eve show there once, and that's where they're like, we got there. Oh yeah, well, you're the only band tonight, so, can you play, 2 hours or whatever? And so we ended up, playing an hour, taking a break, and playing our set again, which was kind of cool on a New Year's Eve. But most of the time, it was, especially with opening up for the other bands, it was a pretty set, like 40 minutes. That's what they wanted. And,
we started to break that down later as getting more, when I started booking more and more bands, we would do 30-minute sets or 25-minute sets, and it became more constructed and more refined, and because we started to get more of a formula. But again, just going back to the early days, that's why it was so brilliant, because it was just so loose. And it's like, well, you guys are downstairs, all right, well, bands figure it out. And that's, I think, another thing that made it such a magical time was as the scene was being created in the bands, it was full involvement. You could go up, and in the foyer in the front of Soma is where so many things happened. Bands were made, decisions were made, and it was a crazy time. And I would just sit there on the stool just talking to people that come in, and that's how I ended up booking POD, and a lot of decisions were made there.
Oh yeah, I like them.
It was the early days that really, and that's why I had to have you on, because just to remember those times, I have such fond memories. And seriously, I think inadvertently I stole some of my stage style from you guys. I know a lot of it was a heavy influence on me, and it was a magical time, and everything was so fresh and so new.
Yeah.
So, which comes to with you're doing that, and then when did Sweat Engine start to kind of fall apart, or did it not, or how would you say? What was the transition?
We sort of hit the peak in, the first year after Timo was in there. So around 93 was really pretty good.
Yeah.
I was sort of looking for the next thing. So we did this, we wanted to do a CD or something, and then CD-ROM was just coming out. So I was also looking at, I was doing a lot of production work by this time, and I'm like, oh, this is actually turning from a band into a business.
Right.
And we came out with a multiple insertion CD-ROM, which was way ahead of its time. It was way too early. People didn't get it. I mean, it was a music by Sweat Engine, but with contributed artists. So loosely based on, Below San Onofre in 91, 92 was art, poetry, music.
Right.
Compilation. Cross-border, San Diego, Tijuana. So this one was going to be, okay, only Sweat Engine music, but art, all sorts of art, because it's CD-ROM, we can do video and things like that. A little too heady for certainly the industrial community, but it was a fun project. And for me, that evolved pretty quickly into a business. And so we did this, had a company called Control Room that was streaming services for radio stations. So by this time we were doing 92.5, 91X and things like that. And that eventually evolved into database work for TV. So I did NBC and things like that and formed another company. And it was around that time that, the shows weren't as exciting as they used to be.
Right.
And so it was a combination. And, before we knew it, it was like, we haven't done any shows in a while. And we did got invited to play a house party. And that was a little awkward. That was Timo couldn't make it.
Oh.
And that was ugly. And I should have learned my lesson, because we'd done a show a few months earlier at 14th and C. That was that warehouse downtown. And,
I remember that.
And our Julia, who was doing vocals and samples for us back then, really awesome, just great performer, great percussionist. She couldn't make it because she was going to be traveling, and I had someone else sing her song, and that was ugly. I learned a lot of life lessons by you don't let other people sing their songs unless it's with Mark going to Timo, he was like, yeah, do whatever you want. I'm done. But with, other people, oh, I can't make it. Well, we're not going to cancel the show. What does that mean? We're not going to do the song. Yeah, you don't do someone else's song.
Right.
And it's something that's awkward in an experimental situation where you have different vocalists or, different pieces like that. It's more like a circus.
Yeah.
I run sound now for Fern Street Circus, which is a blast.
Yeah.
And I'm very sensitive to watching, okay, if this person isn't there, can someone else just come in and do their bit with their music? Well, no, not without permission. So, so around 95-ish, and I started playing with this group, One Volatile One. They were Sweat Engine fans, and it was more industrial percussion. So one of the guys was heavily into taiko and also electronic music. So it was a little more industrial than Sweat Engine was. Less vocals. Okay. Basically bass and drums and, some vocals. And then that was the time I met Luis, who runs Aesthetic Meatfront. And he had come down. We did a show at what was called the Loft downtown. That space that eventually did it catch on fire or something? I don't know. But we did this amazing show down there. JJ put it on. And I met Luis down there, and he was doing this meat thing that was just weird. He brought out a cow's liver and passed it around. And he told the goth people, okay, you all have to lick it. And they did. And I'm like, I mean, what is this about? I'm like, you need drums. And that was now, almost 30 years ago. So I hooked up with him. He moved back to Berlin. We kept that going.
Okay.
And so he still does shows. You know, I haven't seen him. Well, actually, I saw him a couple months ago, but we haven't done a show together since right before the lockdown. We did a big show in Berlin, and then I flew back after the show, and everyone's, okay, we're locking everything down. Good thing you caught your flight. That was at the end of beginning of March. And we did do one Sweat Engine CD, which I brought for you.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, did you guys ever tour?
Just to like LA. We never did the traditional band tour, but here you can have one too. So this was the last one that we did. It's a single. It was in 2004, I want to say. So it's for those who can't see it, it's a gear shaped CD. That was another attempt at doing something new and different. I'm like, I want to make something that's probably going to break people's CD players.
Right.
And it will. If you put this in a slot loading car CD player, it'll get stuck. But, it's shaped kind of like a throwing star. And
that's so cool.
And I did it with Timo's doing vocals on there. I also got Vinny from Spit to do some guitars on there. So it was kind of more of a compilation of, hey, we're all going to do a song. And it's called, we put the go in Gothic, and it's almost Timo style, making fun of the goths type of thing. And it includes some field recording. I went to a club and talked to Vaughn, who you probably know, and there was a girl there. She was going off about what it means to be a goth and things like that. So it's got some cool samples, and it's in surround sound too. So if you put it in a DTS capable video player, it'll play in surround sound. So that was our last recording as Sweat Engine.
Okay.
And then I still keep in touch with Timo. He's out in Arizona.
Okay.
And
so you're doing with production, you were talking about the hardcore kids.
Oh yeah, that's an interesting scene, and I met them from Bob from Tit Wrench. He started sending me over projects to master, and this was another, by this time in the 90s, I was doing computer-based mastering, and there weren't that many people who had DAT machines that could do this kind of thing. So a lot of it was, the bands would go out to Santee or whatever they record. They come to me with either their reel-to-reel 2-track or their DATs, mostly DATs later, and 7-inch singles. So it was, load it in, maybe fix the volume, cut it to the right length. And then what was hilarious, all the bands were like, do you have like a toilet flushing sample? I mean, I'm like, yeah, but I used it on these other guys last week. Oh, that's fine. We just want the song to end with a toilet flushing sample. I'm like, okay, yeah, I got that.
Yeah.
And we put that at the end, and I'd write it back out to DAT, and they'd send it off. I'd FedEx it off for duplication. And, they'd pay me okay. Generally, the bands would come by with a blank check from their parents. In the memo would say not to exceed, whatever.
Yeah.
Because, I was charging, whatever, $25 an hour or something like that. And when you're dealing with data reel to reel, you're real time, So if I'm loading in an hour, well, there's $25. If I'm writing out an hour, that's $25. And we spend, a few hours fixing volume and things like that. And eventually, Bob stopped doing as much of that, and then Gravity came, and they started calling it hardcore.
Yeah.
Before then it was, it's punk, right? But it was now specifically hardcore, which many years later, you look back on it and you go, oh, well, San Diego was the hardcore scene. And I go through Discogs, right? And I look at all this stuff and I'm like, mastered it. But it was me in my living room and my computer and, some decent monitors. And I had our full PA in there so we could listen to it loudly. Met a lot of these guys, and they would they'd stay together for, maybe 2 or 3 singles. And then, we broke up, we got a new guitar player. We broke up, we got a new bass player. We broke up, we got this or that. I'm like, okay, that's sort of how the scene's working. And
that's one of the ways that there was so many bands as well, because everyone would, someone would break off, they would start another band. And then before you know it, there's people, they've been around so much and they've got so many different bands that they've started basically not only, they create their own catalog, but they become their own individuals that certain people want to use in a band. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was out of the South Bay. Mm-hmm. And some incredible bands came out of there. And they're still relevant to this day. But that scene was, to think that coming from fans of Sweat Engine into such a powerful scene that is also incredible. And you got to work on so many of them. And I just find it, from my standpoint, I'm sitting back just booking these bands, going, okay, so you're not around anymore, but, so so-and-so's in a new band, and they're called it. Okay, well, I have to give them a call and then try to get them in. But as, the scene's growing and everything, and these bands are starting to get bigger and bigger and bigger, it's amazing how much talent came through, and to know that, again, me sitting on the sidelines, I didn't realize how these people became so big
without the internet.
And I like to learn all the little nuances of it. Like, I had no idea that you were working with them, that you were doing production.
Yeah, and I didn't really think of it at so much at the time, because I'm performing a service, right? I'm getting paid for it, fine,
right?
And then later, it's like, oh, people get mastering credit. That's a thing,
yeah,
right? So if you go on a Discogs and you look up my name, there's a bunch of stuff that's mastered by me, uncredited, meaning on the album artwork it doesn't actually credit me, right? I put those all in, and but you mentioned you have these people that are bouncing from band to band, or they're almost like a celebrity that people want because they want their sound or things like that. It's almost like a studio musician that you hire the Wrecking Factory or whatever it is, that you hire the wrecking crew. Those are the guys you want playing on your tracks because you like their sound. Mm-hmm. And for me as a mastering engineer, I learned mastering by sitting with these guys and going, okay, we recorded this and we mixed it, but the problem is so-and-so has the masters. All we have is the 2-track mix down and the guitars are way too loud. What can you do?
Right.
And so they were telling me what they wanted it to sound like. Oh, the kick drum is, it's got too much bass in it. We want that. But I'm working with a 2-track mix. I'm not mixing them.
Right.
But I would sit with them for hours and listen to them go, okay, well, let me do this. I'm going to EQ this. I'm going to put this compressor on, and it's going to tame those guitars so that you can hear the vocals better.
Yeah.
Are you cool with that?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, that's exactly what we want. And so I learned so much from them. I'm not taking classes in mastering.
Right.
The band is telling me the sound that they want, and I'm playing it back to them, and they're telling me, okay, I want something different or whatever. And it was such a great way of learning, because you're producing art.
Right.
It's a art that's fairly well established. I mean, punk music, okay. And I got into the routine of saying, okay, who do you want to sound like? But not, people are very sensitive about, okay, my songs are different than so-and-so songs.
Right.
But I really like, the way Mick Jagger's vocals sound. They're not like compressed so much. They're not, there's not so much high end on it,
Right.
I said, okay, so I'm going to give you Mick Jagger vocals and then I'd name some other people without saying, oh, we're stealing their genre or their composition.
Right.
Because really with mastering, you're just, you're putting icing on the cake, and you're fine tuning it and mostly trimming heads and tails and things like that. And that led into, from the Tit Wrench time, Bob's label and all of that. Then Chase started doing Reconstriction. I don't know if you were hooked into him. So that was part of Cargo.
Yeah. Okay.
And so he was sending me all of his compilations, and it was all, take a track off of this DAT, another track off of this DAT, make them all sound good together.
Right.
So these were all these bands that I knew already, like the Babylands and the Hate Departments, but also the ones that hadn't come through San Diego, which was pretty cool, especially the European ones. And that was a really cool way to meet all these guys virtually. Again, it's beginnings of the internet maybe, but there was no social media. And so we had email by then. So a lot of it was, okay, hey, here's what I did to your track in email, and I'm going to mail you a DAT. Take a listen to it and tell me what you think. And then they'd write back to me on email and say, oh yeah, it sounds great. Or, it's, you took out all my bass, or whatever.
Yeah.
It was a really great way of, interacting with the bands, but also, learning something about, how do you make it sound the way they want it to sound.
Right.
But
so trial by fire, but you have to really get in and see, because, all of us artists are pretty sensitive. So if...
and I just have to share this story because it's like, well, what happened to your relationship with Reconstriction? Well, I get all these DATs, and back in the day, DATs were either 44.1 or 48, and you'd write it on the outside of the DAT. And the job was really put the DAT in the DAT machine, set your sample rate on the computer, load the sound in. If it's a different sample rate, convert it to 44.1, playlist it, fade in, fade out, write it back out. Okay.
Right.
I do this a lot. One band sent me a DAT with the wrong sample rate on the outside. I didn't know the song. So when I loaded it in, and after, writing it back out, it came, whatever that is, some number of percent too fast.
Right.
Right. And pitched up.
Yeah.
Nobody checked it. 5,000 copies made of, by this time, CDs.
Right.
Distributed before the band even hears it. The band has a complete meltdown. Cargo's got to throw someone under the bus. So they stop payment on the check written to me. I'm in an awkward position. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Let me go double check the DAT. I'm like, they wrote the wrong sample rate on the outside of the DAT.
Right.
I said, well, you should have checked it. I'm like, I don't know the songs.
Right.
Yeah. and I'm like, well, yeah, you guys should have checked it too. So it was, I never worked for Reconstriction again. Chase, being the cool guy that he was, well, he wasn't cool, but he was the nice guy that he was. He ended up paying me out of his own pocket.
Oh, wow.
And because I'd rent and stuff. And that was sort of the end of the working with Reconstriction. And by that time, they had sort of evolved into a different style of music. But that was also a very cool time. And that all came out of this relationship with, college radio. I met Chase because he was the manager over at San Diego State's college radio station. And, he'd come out to the shows and he'd do these compilations. And that was part of that whole scene too, which was, you call it mixtape, but we were like, okay, I actually brought one of those. I don't know if you got this one. We did this tape with Hate Department. That's,
oh, wow.
We just called it And. So it's Sweat Engine and Hate Department. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. A bunch of tracks from Sweat Engine, a bunch of tracks from Hate Department. It's sort of my version of the evolution beyond a compilation. Like a compilation hides the fact that someone is has the majority of the tracks. But
Right.
if it's two bands, then each band can sort of promote it, as their own thing. It separates it from what a compilation is. And that's the only one I did then. Sometime after, a lot of us, Keith from Biohazard and Contagion opened up studios in LA. Vinny from Spit, he was doing full production in LA. I was doing this mastering stuff and eventually internet stuff. And, Todd, DJ Dax, was doing his computer stuff, and we're all producers now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's do a project where, it's sort of like we're all playing on all the tracks, or we're all playing on a bunch of the tracks. And so that's where Track Horror came from. And we started that with, that would have been 99, I guess.
Okay.
We did the first Track Horror and ended up doing a second one, did a big show at Club Xanth, which was fun.
Cool.
And that was the last, I think, of the projects that captured that vibe of the downstairs at Soma, which is you got 200 people that show up to a show, you got a bunch of bands, but the bands are, they're playing their own music, but they're also playing these collaborative songs that we created together, which was so cool. Yeah, that was a cool vibe.
It's the essence of a scene, for lack of better terms, because everyone was, everyone played their part, and the camaraderie of the bands. But, again, anyone that does anything with art, they know if you don't have an audience, and then if you have an audience, I mean, you can have a bunch of heads out there, but if they're all staring at you like, you're boring them, then you lose that integrity to do what you do. So the early days of the dungeon was just such a magical time because of the fact that you knew, and you weren't going there because you're going there with your girlfriend can dance and you're going to go watch a band. No, you went because you were a part of what was going on. And that's the magic that we wanted to get on the podcast, to really let people know, because a lot of people have kind of forgotten about it at this point. It's so, I mean, we were knocking out shows like crazy during the holiday time. I would be booking upwards of 14 shows, and then we had to do the New Year's. So through the Christmas vacation for the kids, I would have, 5-6 bands just about every night, all the way through that vacation. Wow. So it became, a production line. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't so much about developing the new bands as it was. We can coin the old back in the day. And that's what Soma was down the dungeon, that is now officially back in the day. And you guys were hugely influential. So on that note, we're going to wrap up for now. I could sit here and I could pick your brain from so many more things. There's a lot of topics I do want to get into, but...
Well, I really enjoyed this, and it was fun for me to dig out, the back in the day, and, the show we did in 92 with the Below Santa No Free CD release party was monumental down in the dungeon. It was, first we create this project Cross Border, which was insanely complicated with my partner, Brenda. She did an amazing work coordinating with the Tijuana folks. Yeah. But it brought the scenes together, the San Diego scene and the Tijuana scene. And then we put on this show down in the basement, not just the music, but, the artists came out, and now you have artists appreciating music, which doesn't always work. You have musicians appreciating art, which is even more rare. And then you have poets, which normally would never come to Soma, let alone downtown, who are hanging out in a basement. It was like such a phenomenal project that I keep thinking, how do we recapture that? And I keep coming back to, you can't without the basement of Soma.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the things that Jerry and I have talked about too, is just recreating. I'm actually working with some kids that are trying to do the same thing, but without that building, it's not going to be the same thing. But the more that we talk about it, the more it might inspire other people to find a space to be able to do it and create the same thing. If not, then we're just going to keep telling the stories and keep playing the music. And every time I think of Sweat Engine, I'm just going to get all giddy because I got to sit here with you, Trevor, and I'm like, I'm really stoked on this. We talked about it for a little while now, and I'm glad that we were able to make it happen. I really, truly appreciate you coming in. Any last words you want to say for anything you want to promote right now, or?
I'm just going to promote the general idea of doing new, cool music projects. You know, I've got my own personal stuff that I've been doing. Most of them are collaborations. Hipster Modular is one of them. Medical Grade's another one. The most recent one I did was with Jesse Hunt, and him and his mom are like big Soma fans from those days. And so we did this project called The Ditch, which is what we're calling a music film. Okay. I brought you... I might have mailed you a copy, but I brought you a thumb drive of that video, and it really does come out of that. Okay, I met you and your son 20 whatever years ago, and you know, now we can do cool stuff. Let's do some cool stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
This podcast was recorded at Red Rum Skates. Mixed by me, Jer. Music provided by Breakacre. We appreciate all our listeners and our guests. Please stay tuned until the next one. Have a great one. Bye.